Hello my dear friends, and welcome back to another Star Wars news update. The marketing for Star Wars Skeleton Crew has really started to ramp up, even by accident, because yesterday on StarWars.com, they posted some pictures they weren't supposed to, some stills from the series that weren't in the trailer and weren't even posted on their social media pages. Within hours, they took them down, but it was too late. Star Wars fans took screen grabs, saved the pictures, and posted them online, and they've circulated like crazy. They don't reveal too much in terms of the plot, but they are interesting nonetheless, and they have sparked some pretty fascinating, if not familiar conversations. What am I talking about? For one thing, the photos seem to confirm the plot leaks, the ones we spoke about the other week. I said at the time, take them with a pinch of salt, they could be bogus, but one of the key elements in those story leaks is the kids getting lost in space, but back home, the parents are worried, not just for their safety, but to unveil information about their home world, because it's one of the most sought after by the New Republic, and all of the residents on the former Imperial world don't want their location known, and they're worried the kids are going to leak this. The photo of Wim's dad looking up to the stars seems to at least corroborate the vague idea of it. He's looking up to the stars. Now, along with some of the other pictures, here's what some fans are concerned about. Once again, is the lighting on a Disney Plus Star Wars show too dark? We've had this with Boba Fett. If you guys remember in some of the early episodes in the flashbacks, him running through the desert trying to escape the Tuskens, it was super dark. Same in the Kenobi show. Now there is an explanation for this. It's mainly to do with the digital technology on the volume, but more than anything it's an HDR streaming compression issue, especially with the way it's uploaded to Disney Plus, and then you factor in watching it on a smaller device, and that's why some scenes look unnecessarily dark. There is also the issue of color grading in post-production, and over the last 24 hours I've seen fans express real concern this is going to be one of those shows that just looks a bit too dark. But in saying all of this, something occurred to me. One of the wildest Star Wars fan theories might be proven to be true. Ever since we found out Skeleton Crew is going to see the kids lost in a different galaxy, fans have wondered, are they going to end up on Peridia? Is this show an excuse to get Ahsoka and Sabine back home? While the second part of that theory might be a stretch, the terrain in the new stills looks like it very well could be Peridia. The grey sky, the dead trees, the rocky terrain, and the overall aesthetic looks very much inspired by the second galaxy in the Dave Filoni show. Imagine if these kids come across Sabine, Ahsoka and Huyang. I personally think it'd be a bit unnecessary, especially given the fact we anticipate this show will do lower numbers than other Mandoverse projects. In this scene we have Neil, looking terrified. He's absolutely adorable, and this scene is very Goonies-esque. The kids have to work through their differences and problem solve as a team. This is a coming-of-age story, and in this frame the two girls, KB and Fern, are clearly arguing with the boys. Also notice the amount of head hair that Neil has. I'm starting to be more and more convinced he is not an Ortolan. He's not as globular, and you guys have no doubt heard me ramble non-stop about the anatomical differences between the two species. In this scene, Wim and Neil are clearly at some kind of food market. With this show, I'm very excited to meet the new characters, but I'm also a bit conflicted, and I'll tell you why. The show was filmed over 2 years ago. At the time, Lucasfilm had 2 concurrent Mandoverse projects on their minds, and this is really important to note. The timeline of events was as follows. The Mandalorian Season 3 began filming in fall of 2021 and wrapped in late March 2022. Around that time, concepts for Skeleton Crew were already in place. Bryce Dallas Howard admitted so in a recent interview. Skeleton Crew then filmed between 2022 and early 2023, and so much of the show coming on December 3rd was modelled after The Mandalorian Season 3. A lot of the ideas and characters are borrowed from that season, Thane and the pirate crew, and maybe some of the themes. If there's overlap, the perception of the audience based on the way they reacted to The Mandalorian Season 3 could be a bit more sour than it would have been had it released around the same time. I'm not saying The Mandalorian Season 3 was terrible, but it definitely was the less well received of the 3 seasons of the show. And for some fans, it was the final straw, saying they're no longer too interested in how it all plays out. Unfortunately, while I'm very excited for Skeleton Crew, I can see a similar situation repeating itself. We often speak about Star Wars being in a very different place to 2020, or even 2021, but even as recently as a year ago, the vibe was very different in the fandom. And with the gap between production and release, expectations from audiences can shift, especially considering we just had The Acolyte. Things are really tense, and understandably fans are a bit more on edge, a bit more skeptical of Disney Star Wars. There's also generally a trend of more fatigue and oversaturation. The themes in Skeleton Crew, if they're repeating a lot of the tropes from Mando, could feel a bit tired. This shouldn't be too much of an issue considering the stories are so different, but it was just a passing thought. That being said, there are two things this show has definitely got going for it. It isn't overhyped, and therefore there aren't too many high expectations. So if it disappoints, I think it's going to be more of a whatever situation, but to contrast, if it blows us away and is very good, I think fans are going to really take to it. And the second major advantage, there haven't been too many spoilers. A couple of rumours, but nothing concrete, nothing which spoils the story. And because it's been marketed as much lower stake, we're not necessarily expecting contributions from some of the major players of the Mandoverse. I don't think we're seeing Grogu or Mando or Thrawn. Like I said, maybe Ahsoka, although that is a huge doubt. So the characters are new, we're not overly invested. So I suppose the question is, how disappointed could one really get about this? I'm just excited for the ride. What do you guys think? And what do you think of these photos? Let me know down below. I've got to hand something to Lucasfilm though. They've done a fantastic job at keeping some of the characters, some of the main characters from the show secret. We know from some of the merch leaks, there is another of Neil's species called Jorka. It could be a younger sibling, it might be a parent, we don't know. No trace of that character, and we still don't know the name of Tunde Adebempe's character, who is probably Wim's dad. That's what the leaks have said. Again, all just speculative. There's so much we don't know. The importance of Kerry Condon's character who works at the school. Are we going to see the presence of the New Republic or the Imperial Remnant? Is the show going to give us any of the politics going on during this time? Those are the questions I can't wait to see being answered. But again, I want to reinstate something I said the other day. We can't take the show too seriously. It's whimsical and fun. Everything else is just the icing on the cake. In other Star Wars news that might have gone under the radar, Alan Tudyk is very excited for Andor Season 2, confirming more smartassery from K2SO from Rogue One. And speaking of that, did you know Disney is still footing the bill for it? Just like we spoke about for The Force Awakens a couple of days ago, the financial impact on Disney for Rogue One is still going on after 8 years. As I covered in the segment on The Force Awakens, it can take a long time, years in fact, for the FPC to work out the real cost. After tax, after all the salaries and expenditures, and due to the recent Tarkin likeness debacle, Disney is still dealing with the costs of Rogue One, and last year the updated amount was $325.8 million spent on the production cost. In 2023 alone, as of the filing which was on December 31st, they spent $2.8 million last year. However, believe it or not, it doesn't stop there. As shown in this graph, the company also banked a $56.2 million reimbursement from the UK government, so it brought the cost down to $269. But in the last 2 years, there's been an increase in spending on a movie which released in 2016. But share your thoughts on everything we spoke about in the comments down below. And if you enjoyed this video, my dear friends, please be sure to give me a big fat thumbs up, subscribe if you're new, check me out on socials, and may the Force be with you, always.